In any case, let's get to the live press briefing where JD Vance is, treat Larite JD Vance is actually delivering a conference here, and we'll get started there, and we'll continue from there on out.
A little bit more careful. We're going to talk about toning down the temperature, which I know the president wants to do, and I certainly want to do. The temperature is to have a media that tells the truth. I encourage you all to do that. God bless you.
Never mind, he's done. Okay.
Reasonable is for so much with this most recent. It's important to understand why this matters to the American people. I am a father of 3 young kids, a lot of people in my generation. What is that going on there? Is that normal? Okay. CNN installed this broken camera just to throw me off my game, but it's not going to work. So here's the simple fact here. If you're a young parent struggling to afford childcare in the United States of America, there are programs that we have to make it easier for your kids to get in daycare, for your kids to get in preschool. Those programs should go to American citizens, not be defrauded by Somali immigrants and others. Make it hard for you to get the access to the resources you need. But number 2, making it easier for people who shouldn't even be in this country to fleece the United States and our taxpayers to begin with. We have actually activated a major interagency task force to make it possible to get to the heart of this fraud. We have Department of Agriculture resources that are focused on SNAP.
Yeah, so JD Vance, the vice president, went up today on the podium in the White House in front of the press pool and tried to do what he was, what he was hired to do, basically, aside from being Peter Thiel's blood boy. JD Vance's main position in the administration is to try and normalize and liberalize the commentary coming from the unlimited horrors that this administration is dishing out on a daily fucking basis. Donald Trump will come out and say, we're invading Venezuela for oil. JD Vance will come out and go, actually, oil is an important resource, but it's also illegal for Maduro to be delivering drugs like that. His role is to talk to MSNBC voters to a certain degree, or at least to keep the independents on board. But of course, his higher ambition is to try and win the presidency in 2028 if there is ever an election again. And for that reason, he's constantly finding himself leaning into some of the most vicious white supremacist attitudes, despite having an Indian wife and Indian children. And also, engaging in this actually as commentary. So actually, he's, I think, stuck between a rock and a hard place, and that's the reason why he comes across as very disingenuous, and everybody ends up hating him, because the racists don't like him because his wife is Indian, and he comes across as a disingenuous lib, and the liberals don't like him because he's obviously eating Trump's dick every single day. So he can't present himself as the moderate, reasonable figure, and he can't present himself as the guy who will bring about the white nationalist, terror state. So that's besides the point, though. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background onto what JD Vance's goal is here, what JD Vance's role is here, and then talk about what he's doing in terms of the commentary that you can expect from him.
Fraud, so that people who need food benefits can get them, but illegal aliens and other fraudsters don't. We have over 1,500 subpoenas that the Department of Justice has issued to get to the heart of the fraud ring. The ICE agent has been ID'd as
well. From what I understand, at least last night when I was checking in on this stuff, people were saying that he was already running away. The ICE agents were basically trying to get him to escape the state for some reason, which is, he's the most innocent man alive. I don't understand. Shocking, but he's already out of state.
Almost 100 indictments, mostly Somali immigrants, but also a few others. And of course, we're looking in with broad investigatory authority to a number of the instances of wrongdoing that we've seen in Minneapolis. But we also want to expand this. We know that the fraud isn't just happening in Minneapolis, it's also happening in states like Ohio. It's happening in states like California. And so what we're doing in order to help coordinate this remarkable interagency effort from the Trump administration, but also to make sure that we prosecute the bad guys and do it as swiftly and efficiently as possible, is we are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. I want to thank a couple of people for their cooperation, in particular Pam Bondi, our Attorney General. First of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud, really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it, but importantly, creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official, but this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people. And here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences. Number one, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number two, it's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an Associate Attorney General. I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And
that is what happened. And no, they didn't even do that, as a matter of fact. They did not do that. They actually normalized this violence because that's just usually the position of state media and mainstream media in general, which is whenever state violence occurs, they will use neutral language, passive tone, as we've talked about quite extensively. It's basically 2020 coverage all over again. This is like post George Floyd, Black Lives Matter coverage all over again. Once again, it's about unjustifiable state violence, and that's what it was. And now that unjustifiable state violence is obviously extended out not just to like unarmed black teenagers that are disproportionately targeted by the police, but a federal law enforcement apparatus called ICE that is even less accountable than local law enforcement, that is going door to door to try to find illegals, as they like to say, in the same way that the Gestapo did, the same way that the Nazis did, and killing people in the process. So whenever these guys are actually talking about like the state is actually not, or the media is not actually playing ball, what they mean is that they're not servile enough. And it's crazy because they are pretty servile. They demand more fealty. They want more Barry Weiss style commentary on this. They want to prop up every single thing that's going on. Okay. And I feel every now and then, whenever I see this kind of commentary, I think to myself, especially when I see the kind of like hypocrisy, I think to myself, I wonder if they're just like doing it deliberately to try to train their audience into not giving a shit about the inconsistencies. It almost feels like they want to train their cult into identifying the violence, being on board with the violence, and loving the violence and demanding more of it for their ideological enemies. Which cult? Which cult do you think I could be talking about? The cult that you're seeing in front of you, the MAGA cult. Okay. Republicans that look at a situation that I think a couple years past, maybe a decade ago, would consider it to be, would consider this moment to be a unifying moment, to consider it to be a completely unjustifiable instance of violence, have now decided this is good. This is actually good.
Say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault.
Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. You have every right. You have every right to document public servants that are engaging in illegal actions. Okay? It is in the law. Not that we don't even have enough evidence on whether or not that's what Renee Nicole Good was doing in that moment. It doesn't matter. Even if she was doing that, it is still perfectly legal. Legal observers have been around in every single protest in United States history and protests all around the world. Okay? The fact that they are trying to present this as distorting law enforcement operations or obstructing law enforcement operations is completely ridiculous. And there's also some inconsistencies here as well. Both Renee's parents or Renee's ex's father, or not ex, sorry. Renee Good was widowed in 2023. And her father-in-law said that, and her mother as well had said that she was not an activist at all. Now, that might have changed, but it doesn't even matter. Like, this inconsistency here is utterly irrelevant, because even if she was, what she was doing was perfectly permissible, perfectly within the bounds of reason. It's completely ridiculous that the media is not calling to account what this administration is saying and doing. Okay? Calling a person that you slaughtered with your unaccountable Gestapo force a terrorist is insane to me. Do you think this will work? I don't think it will work. I do not think it will work, partially because the victim's background. I think this makes it much harder for the administration to defend. In many circumstances, we've seen similar versions of this when it's like a black teenager that is immediately presented as a violent force in the media. But you can't really do that when most Americans will identify someone like Renee with their aunts, with their sisters, with their cousins, with their mothers. That's it. She was a kind person who was in her own neighborhood, and she was shot by a fat Gestapo agent that was airdropped into this area to do violence, to hurt people, and he ended up hurting someone. And yes, the killer has already been identified, and we'll be talking about that as well, obviously, in a second. I just wanted to dive really quickly into this official narrative that's coming out, okay? I know that victims do not have to be perfect, and in many circumstances, they're not. We don't choose to highlight people we don't turn people into martyrs. It's the state that turns people into martyrs, and their background is utterly irrelevant in this circumstance. But she's as close to a perfect victim as you can get, and I think that's the reason why a lot of normies will identify themselves with and align with Renee Good rather than the state itself. Can you check my chat? There's a creator you have to connect with. Chatter, not the time. Okay, please.
And to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing.
The convo with Asman was so insane yesterday. He admitted that she didn't intend to hit the ICE officer, and she also didn't hit him, but somehow her execution was still justified. Yes, these guys do not have a real world view. I need you to understand. Most Republicans, Asmongold here is just a catch-all for he's like a vessel for the worst of the worst right-wing fascist reactionaries of all different sorts here. But the commentary is the same, okay? A lot of these guys that you see on the internet that are, defending this sort of thing right now are just going off of their whims. They don't really have anything. They don't have a leg to stand on. They just saw an instance of violence that the state engaged in, and their first position was to say, well, let's try and justify this violence because obviously this cowardly little baby who executed someone in broad daylight was probably in the right. Okay. And that's precisely what took place. Oh, I saw this. I know what this is. Yeah. I saw this one. XQC. To be honest, if only last two things you can be are bootlicker and a terrorist, I'll be a bootlicker. That's my class. XQC in his chat defending the murder of ICE agents, or murder by ICE agents of a mother of three, a poet who was simply trying to get home. I mean, that is how some people slot themselves. Okay. They slot themselves in this way. They decide, you know, if there's only, yes, take the random chat as a fact. What random chat? What random chat did I take as a fact? I'm not going to do this, actually. There's going to be a lot of derailers in the chat today while I'm trying to go through the serious stuff real quick. But what is this? It's a lot worse. What? Woke up too early. Damn. Nothing to debunk. Far left libtards defending terrorists. This is the daily routine now. Yawn. The main problem is people defend everyone like their life depends on it. They want no one to go to jail, but want to kill every intellectual opponent. Here's the daily debunk. Draw a gun at police, get shot. Drive at police, get shot. Any other argument is propagated by domestic terrorists. I like that the environment that these guys are actually cultivating is basically if a cop with a weapon is around your car at any moment, they can just shoot and kill you, and then it's totally appropriate. Especially considering that we figured out that this guy has done this exact same thing in the past as well. They walk up to a car, not from the side as they're supposed to, because the law enforcement officer manual dictates that they're not supposed to walk up to a car directly, and they're never supposed to shoot at a car, because obviously if you shoot at a car, that car can turn into that car can turn into a deadly weapon if you kill the driver. Okay, so it's so unimaginably. It is so utterly ridiculous. Okay, and yes, Washington Post went frame by frame and found out that shot one was fired while both of this guy's feet were firmly on the side of the car. Shot two was fired from behind the steering wheel at that point with the open window, and so was shot three, like far after the car had actually passed them. This person didn't make a split-second decision in the way that they're presenting it. He had a phone camera in his hand. Okay, I need you to understand, he did not fear for his life. And a lot of those instances, a lot of those statements are obviously going to factor into the court case, if there is even a court case at all, because the reality of the matter is he came in, he had a phone camera in his one hand, he circled around the car, came to the other side of the car, pulled out his gun with his phone in his other hand, pulled out his gun, car passes him by, he shoots from the side of the windshield, as you saw, okay, from the front of the windshield, but literally from the side of the car. And then shot two and shot three are directly fired after the car has passed them, long after the car has passed them, not only putting others in jeopardy, not only assassinating this person, executing this person in broad daylight, but then also putting other people's lives in jeopardy in a area that he wasn't even supposed to be in to begin with. There was no reason for ICE to be there. There was no reason for ICE to try and aggressively posture towards this person who was waving them away, waving them off. It was cold-blooded, state-sanctioned murder, and anyone that tries to defend this cold-blooded, state-sanctioned murder is a delusional bootlicker, a delusional loser who is actively trying to cope with the trauma of recognizing that this state is going to do unlimited violence, and you either actually push back against that unlimited violence and you say enough is enough, we have to stop this, or you just let it happen and hope that it never happens to you. And unfortunately for many of us, especially in the crowded field of entitled, spoiled, neurodivergent Twitch streamers, there are going to be plenty of unimaginably privileged Twitch streamers that have millions and millions of dollars in net worth that never really leave their homes, that will turn around and act like this is actually totally normal. Just remember that. And before people say, says you, I do put my body out there, and I do actually put my money where my mouth is. These guys do not. They recognize their position in society, and they keep telling their audience, who could very well be the next victim of state violence, that the state violence is correct no matter what, no matter who, no matter how. Enough is enough, okay? Enough is enough. So So if you're wondering where a lot of these people are coming from in your day-to-day, where your coworkers are getting these like ridiculous ideas from, that watched the same exact video that you did, but then they came to a very different conclusion. Some of them already have the American serf mindset. They're already servile. They're ready to lick the boot. Their automatic conditioning is cops are correct no matter what they do. They can come into your house. They can literally f your life up. They can rape your family members, and you'll still have to get down on one knee and kiss their rings and say, well, sorry, if you did it to me, then I probably deserve it. This is the attitude that some people have, unfortunately. But that attitude is not reflected in broader society. There are obviously people that, regardless of how much they love police, how much they think like people are doing the right thing or trying to do their very best here and there are obviously still people who go, this is a f***ed up situation. Okay, this is a f***ed up situation. You don't have to be woke or a liberal to recognize that this is a completely unacceptable situation. If anything, you are in a cult if you look at the situation and think, no, there is a reason for this. There is a justification for this, and I think I'm going to try to figure out a justification for this no matter what. But what matters here is that if you're wondering where these justifications are coming from, okay, it's people like Asmongold. It's people who are right-wing, who are at least like propagandizing in the right-wing position and trying to give people a reason to believe that this was a justifiable act of state-sanctioned violence when it very clearly wasn't. And for a lot of people, they want to believe that the state is still working. The state is actually not completely crippled, okay? That there is probably a good reason for this. They don't want to snap out of this senseless, this ridiculous reality that they've built around themselves. That, like, Trump maybe isn't doing everything right, or maybe Trump isn't actually clearly putting your best interest and the interests of like all American citizens at his primary focus, and maybe he's just defending the interests of the pedophilic elite and his favorite friends. Okay, it is ridiculous. Don't say both sides are completely wrong in their actions. Okay, getting hostile gets you killed. This kind of centrist nonsense is bullshit. Okay, it's not big brain. You are not actually impressing any of your peers with how intelligent you are. You are, unfortunately, trying to find a more intellectually consistent position in this circumstance, okay? The power is in the hands of the state. You have to understand. And with great power comes great responsibility, okay? And when you have the power to end someone's life, okay, at any given moment, you need to carry that responsibility everywhere you go. So no, there is a much higher bar to clear in the instance of defending murder, in the instance of defending manslaughter, and wearing a badge that says police, ICE, or federal law enforcement doesn't change that reality. A life was taken unjustifiably, and there was no reason for that life to be taken. So anyone that is trying to victim blame in this circumstance is not actually presenting themselves as a brilliant person at all. They are just moronic and desperately trying to find any out here that tells them, no, actually, there has to be good reason for this. Sometimes there isn't, okay? Sometimes there isn't. In this case, there is not. You don't have to immediately try to find a justification for senseless murder, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say every single cop or every single ICE agent is behaving in this... Every single ICE agent is behaving with like unlimited death and destruction, even though ICE is pretty close to that. Let's be real. And these unjustifiable violent structures exist in a way to pacify the part of your brain or to destroy the part of your brain. If you're in one of these organizations, it destroys the part of your brain that thinks about every single person that you're dealing with as though they're real human beings with lives, with children, with loved ones that they're leaving behind. When you actually end their life, when you kill them, right? But ultimately, everyone is trying to do their very best, I guess. And then there are a lot of people who end up on the wrong side of it. Okay. Having said that, however, You can have the capacity to look at a situation like this. I believe in you, and realize right from wrong. Okay. Like I said yesterday, this is not about left versus right. This is about right versus wrong. If you cannot say that it is wrong for federal agents that are untrained to get drop shipped into a neighborhood at the mercy of the president to go and cause terror and panic in said neighborhood, and then end up killing someone after giving them conflicting information, after giving them conflicting commands, as cops are known to do, okay, in a lot of different circumstances, and then assassinating them in broad daylight, and your first inclination is to defend the law enforcement agent here, you are out of your mind, okay? You are out of your mind. I don't think you understand. You are not a cop. You are not an ICE agent. Stop fantasizing about being the ICE agent in this situation and start recognizing the reality that you are closer, or your loved ones are closer to being the next Renee Good than they are the murderous cop. Okay? And then it's like, imagine if you shoot a fake gun at a police and say, dude, that tip was orange. How about not do that? Cars are deadlier than guns. I've been saying it for years. You can't say I'm grifting. I've spammed this to chat. I always say that vehicles are weapons. It's not great policing to stand in front of cars, but it's not great civilianing to press the gas pedal when being asked to stop and people are in front. The word murder will lose its value. People keep using it this way. Add to the list of shit that cucks are buzzwording. Imagine your mother said, F this, I'm not teaching you nothing today. I got to go block traffic with my car. Poor kid. Like, trying to find a way to turn this into a Michael Brown style situation. Like, if you've been in this game for a long enough time, you've already seen this, right? Whenever there is another victim of police violence and that victim is a black teenager, the media will get up in arms and try to find the laundry list of reasons as to why this person was actually a criminal, right? Doing that to a 37-year-old woman is only going to negatively polarize you to the rest of this country. I'll be honest. And I don't think these guys recognize that. And the reason why they don't recognize it is because they are so locked in an echo chamber on the internet, getting constant negative feedback from Twitter, making them think that like everyone is a rugged white supremacist. Okay? It's completely ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. These guys are not really thinking clearly about any of this shit. They're just simply leaning into audience feedback. It's not content. Have a brain, please. Have a goddamn brain. You have the capacity to recognize right from wrong. It's so unimaginably cruel. Your output here is so cruel. And not only that, but you look like a goddamn monster because you are a monster. Let's be real. You are a goddamn monster if you see this incident and your first inclination is, how do I justify this? How do I make this seem like it was normal? How do I make this seem like it was warranted? You're a monster. You're a cruel, monstrous piece of shit. Okay? But fear not. People will forget. People will forget about your horrible worldview eventually. Anyway.
That you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car.
Yeah, it's bullshit. It's complete and utter bullshit, dude. She was not trying to do that. She was not trying to do that at all. There's no evidence to suggest that she was trying to do that. All evidence, once again, presents the opposite, okay? All evidence that we have seen so far presents the exact opposite reality. And I'm going to go through it real quick. Once again, okay? As far as we know, from all of the additional angles that have come out, okay? From everything that has taken place, down to the fact that this cop was not actually in fear for his life, I'm going to show you this angle that we hadn't seen yesterday. Video of the Minneapolis ICE shooting completely contradicting ICE's account that the driver was trying to ram anyone. Looks like they were turning around to leave and immediately lit up. So what takes place here, we've seen the main video, right? But we had not seen this angle before. This is the guy who is actually the person who ends up, the ICE agent who ends up murdering. Jonathan Ross is his name, for the record. This is Jonathan Ross. He was dragged in a separate incident last year by a fleeing driver, according to court records. Jonathan Ross is here. He has a phone camera. He has his phone out filming people, and you'll see in a second. Look, on his right hand is his phone. He's filming people. He's fixing his mask up. And if you notice something, if you've seen the original video, you already know this, but Renee Good is in the car, okay? Renee Good is in the car. She's trying to move the car, but because there are a lot of there's a lot of commotion. There is a lot of commotion going on, okay? There's a lot of commotion going on as you can see, the car is already moving here, right? Look. She'll move forward a little bit, but then ICE agents in separate vehicles get in front of her, okay? She, from the other angle that we've seen, waves them away because she's very clearly trying to leave, okay? She stops right here. First car goes, and you can see her waving them away in the first video. Then this pickup truck that is an unmarked pickup truck with lights on also comes through, and she's still waving them away, but it stops. Instead of passing her and then letting her merge into the lane and leave, the pickup truck stops. They get out of the truck. Two ICE agents get out of the truck and instantly start yelling at her. One is they've already very clearly given her the order to leave the area, okay? But this one dipshit runs in and tries to get her out of the car. Backs up. And then while she's turning around, the first shot is fired. And then the second and third shot is fired, ending up killing Renee Good. And for the record, he still has his phone. That's footage. That is footage. That will be evidence. He had his phone in his hands. And these guys want to tell you, these guys want you to believe that this dickhead who was running around with his phone in his hand, filming everything, was actually in fear of his life. These dickheads want to tell you that the first shot that was fired when the car had actually passed them, was a totally justifiable shot. The second shot was shot behind Renee Good. The third one as well, when the car had long passed this person. And these guys want to tell you, these guys want to have you believe that what you saw with your own two eyes is actually a lie and that you should listen to their narrative instead. We're not doing that. We're not playing that game, okay? And yes, I will be going into the video that the New York Times put out that contradicts the Trump administration's account on the ICE shooting in Minneapolis, because after, as I explained to you yesterday, after Renee Good was shot and killed in broad daylight, after she was shot and killed, ICE agents stop a physician that is walking around from actually going to her and rendering aid. They tell her that they have their own medics coming. But because they have blocked the road, the ambulance can't even get near the car. So the EMTs come later to pick her lifeless body up. And before she is even transported to the hospital, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, dog killer Kristi Noem, comes out and says that she was a domestic terrorist. Think about how disgusting this is. Now, if you're familiar with the last 2 years of commentary, where I talked about the atrocities that became a daily part of existence for Palestinians, the Palestinians that have experienced this for the last 80 years under the oppressive thumb of the fascist ethno-state that is known as Israel, you have already heard the official organs of the state basically behave in this exact same way. They murder someone, right? And then they turn around and say the person that they murdered was a Hamas terrorist. They stop ambulances from actually getting there to render aid. This is basic Israel shit. And the American government is doing it to the American citizens. And the American government has been doing this to American citizens, but oftentimes the American government has done this to Black American citizens, brown American citizens, indigenous American citizens. This time they're doing it to a white woman who's 37 years old. And as someone who's, been doing this advocacy, as someone who has been communicating with organizers for a very long time, for the last 10 plus years of my political commentary career, I can tell you the first people that knew this, the first people that understood that state violence that justifies executions in broad daylight about white people is state violence that definitely does not give a shit about anybody else. So the very fact that this is becoming a national story and the American government's first inclination is to try and tar and feather this victim as a domestic terrorist means that there is definitely an attitude shift taking place. It means that none of you are safe. If you thought that the color of your skin would save you in this circumstance, you are wrong. Okay? You must immediately drop this notion. It's us versus them. You are not a part of the team. No matter how hard you champion this violence and think this state has your back, you can be an unintended victim. And then the government will turn around and call you a terrorist. Okay? It's that simple. It's that simple. You're not a part of the in-group at all. Unless you are a pedophilic elite that has been on the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs, you're not part of the in-group. You will not be sheltered from this violence. And it can take your life just as easily as it took Renee Good's.
Seconds later, he turns back around and tells his colleagues to call.
Yeah, he has his phone out. He literally has his phone out and he's walking. He's walking with his phone out, dude. Does this look like a man who was in imminent harm? You can't delete that video, by the way, from your phone. If you were filming that footage, good luck. Deleting that footage from your phone is not going to actually delete it from the hard drive. Obviously, because it's law enforcement, I'm sure they've already wiped it to the best of their goddamn ability. But I hope that they can actually extract that footage from the metadata. Isn't that crazy? And there are still people who look at this and go, nah, dude, like, I can't possibly see myself or a loved one in the shoes of the victim here. I have to fantasize about being the cop and being fearful. I can see myself as being a fearful cop in this circumstance and shooting and killing someone and getting a possible legal kill out of it than seeing myself as, or a loved one as the victim in this circumstance. It's nuts.
And tells
he didn't even drop his phone. He pulled out his gun with his left hand, or he had the phone on his left hand, and he pulled out his gun with the right hand. And while he was filming, he dropped 3 bullets into that car. The first from the side of the windshield, and then the second and third shot long after the car had passed from the open window. It's completely ridiculous that there are people out there who are, trying to hit this like partisan angle on a situation that's like very clearly not supposed to be partisan at all. Like, if we cannot, as a society, arrive at the conclusion that a 37-year-old woman in her own neighborhood should not be assassinated by an ICE agent who's hopped up on fumes because she happened to be in a car in the vicinity of an ICE agent, okay? Getting contradicting and conflicting information and conflicting commands from all these other people. If we cannot agree on that, we can't agree on anything. It's over. And then instantly she's called a terrorist. This is yet another turning point, in my opinion. In my estimation, this is another turning point. Okay? We have now arrived at yet another turning point where from this point on, there's going to be people who are slotted in to the assumption that no matter who the state kills, even if it's their grandparents, they'll be like, nope, well, they probably deserved it. What was grandma doing? Victim blaming every step of the way. Anyway, I got to pee real quick.
He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to read a quote from Tim Walz earlier today. He said, when things looked bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation on July 3rd, 1863, and I think we may be in that moment now. Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe, in fact, has participated in fraud. That's what this new Assistant Attorney General position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
A related question here. I mean, Democrats have accused ICE of murder. They've said they're targeting Americans. They've told ICE to get the F out of Minnesota. This is going to stoke the fire against ICE agents, and you're talking about ICE agents right now and being concerned about them. What, if anything, is the administration going to do to make sure these folks are protected during these protests? But also, should DHS sort of revisit their procedures here? I mean, nobody wants to see an American killed. Are there changes that need to be made to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Look, first of all, of course, nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy, but it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration. So number one, we have to say, as a matter of leadership, and I would appreciate if the Democrats would join me on this, let's be honest about the fact that we have way too many illegal aliens in this country. Our ICE officers should be supported in doing their job. You're trying to actually marshal the far left lunatic.
He's right. Yeah, dude. Everyone that the state kills is automatically a far left lunatic. Totally. It's pretty crazy that this is, I mean, they're very clearly positioning themselves as saying, like, anyone that we kill, we can just get away with killing. Anyone that we kill, we can get away with killing because everyone that we kill automatically becomes a far left domestic terrorist lunatic. And some of you don't understand what that means, okay? Because you can't see yourself ever being victim to this kind of state enforcement, repression, or violence. You unironically think, no, he's right, dude. Everyone that the state kills is a far left lunatic. If you think a 37-year-old poet who left behind multiple children in her own neighborhood is a far left lunatic domestic terrorist because the state decided to kill her, it's over for you. You're not going to make it. And it's crazy because, like, we were trained on this for the last 2 years, but Hamas, human shields, but Hamas. And I think, like, a lot of people just go, but Hamas, even when it comes to their own neighbors in their own backyard, in their own suburbs. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. What is this? I don't know why I can't see the tweet, the link that you sent me. Totally justified shooting, not even close. Curious about these stickers on the back of the car. Various whack job groups and affiliations. These are U.S. National Parks stickers, dude. Like, can you imagine? Even if it wasn't, even if it was anything else, like, oh, well, she had scary stickers on the back of her car, so I think it's okay that she got assassinated. That's the desperation that you're hearing from the right today. I mean, this is literally when people ask, like, how did the broader, how did the broad majority of German society get on board with the actions of the Nazis when they were just, like, kidnapping people from the fucking streets and sending them God knows where, which we now know were concentration camps and death camps, right? You're watching it unfold. You were right about this being a filter for actual animals yesterday. Yeah, you are lower than a goddamn slug in my eyes if you look at a situation like this and find yourself defending the state violence. Like, how can you not see? You have, it's crazy because it literally, like, you have no, you're not even an animal, right? Because even an animal has self-preservation. You don't have self-preservation. You cannot comprehend that you are giving permission to the state to do this to you as well. If you don't stand in opposition to this, it's going to get worse. Even an animal looks for shelter. Even an animal looks for self-preservation. You don't have self-preservation. You are justifying unlimited state violence that will inevitably come your way. I cannot believe it. I cannot comprehend it. I don't understand how people operate this way. I know things seem impossible. Things seem awful, okay? I understand that you're too busy worrying about your own shit, and it's much easier to slot yourself and to allow others, slot yourself into a political delineation, an ideology, team sports, and allow others to make to do your thinking for you, to just like repeat something that your team is saying. But this is an opportunity for you to snap out of it, okay? And if you can't snap out of it here, then I don't even know if you'll ever snap out of it. They keep escalating this insanity because they don't have a choice. The second they let up and give an inch to this absurdity, the whole thing falls apart like a house of cards. So they just have to manufacture an entirely new reality whole cloth. It's not tenable. You can't convince people a mother driving around with stuffed animals in her glove compartment was actually a cold-blooded domestic terrorist. You can't actually tell people their eyes are lying to them, but they'll pick anything other than a retreat. That's exactly what's going on here. And it blows my mind that there are people who are trying to put themselves in this predicament where they're like, no, she is a domestic terrorist. Yeah, this is what happened to Charlie Kirk and you guys celebrated it. Like, you don't understand. You do not understand what you are advocating for, what you're giving permission for. This is unironically, yes, Cloud District Enjoyer is right. This is suicidal empathy, I guess, in some ways. Empathy for the villain in the story. Suicidal misanthropy. They hate people so much that they're willing to put their own lives at risk to defend actions that will come back to them. The opposite of virtue signaling is vice signaling. And when you talk about suicidal empathy, what you're doing is unironically suicidal. You are justifying, you're signing off on your own demise. If you look at a situation like this and you think, oh, I'll be the powerful person here, I'll be the scared cop here in this situation, so I'm going to justify this state-sanctioned violence because I don't think it'll ever come to me. Even in this situation, if you're saying that, you are delusional. You're signing off on your own death warrant. Elon labeled a tweet you retweeted as sensitive content to limit its visibility. This one? Really? Anything that comes across as negative towards Asmongold gets limited. Anything that is pro, Elon Musk constantly is base boosting Asmongold and many others. Asmongold is just one person, right? But I said here, the owner of this website is a real life white identitarian who loves this guy and routinely boosts his shit, just like that mouth breathing troglodyte who demanded to see children at Somali daycares. Your coworkers are getting brainwashed by the dumbest, most hateful people alive. Did you watch this compilation? No, I did not watch the compilation. Maybe if we have time later, we can take a look at it. It is information warfare. That is what's going on, for sure. Another sad case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes, but it's being dramatized. Brother, buddy, you're not coming across as like a based sociopath. You understand that, right? When you say stuff like that, nobody thinks you're being super cool. Everyone can see that behind this like veneer, there lies a very insecure man, okay? Not only an insecure man, but a stupid man. You are behaving in a way that actually will harm you, okay? It will inevitably harm you. Is the reality of the situation, dude? No, the reality of the situation is that an ICE agent that was not even supposed to be in that neighborhood, if it wasn't for the whims of the goddamn president who wants to get people's attention off the Epstein files, sent 2,000 DHS and ICE agents into Minneapolis for no reason. Okay. And then these goddamn untrained losers, one of these goddamn untrained losers ended up shooting someone in broad daylight for the crime of being in a goddamn vehicle that is moving away, responding to the previous commands that were given to her. And you look at that situation and you still try to justify it. That's it. She let off the brakes to try to hit a car that passed by. Is so like you are theory crafting here against something that we can all see with our own two eyes. And I know, listen to me. I know that you feel lonely and you think that there is a sense of community here, okay? There is a sense of community here where you think if I defend this stuff, I won't lose my friends online. I won't lose my shared purpose online. But you can be your own individual man and think critically, okay? I beg you to have some common sense, dude. Please be a normal adult. Be a real human being for once. If you can't say that this was wrong, then there is nothing that you think is wrong. There is never going to be an instance where you think is wrong. You will always find a way to justify it because this is such a black and white situation. It's such a black and white situation, and yet you've still decided that these guys are telling you this is a partisan issue, that this person was a radical left-wing domestic terrorist. If this was black and white in the opposite direction, they wouldn't feel the need to lie about everything. They wouldn't feel the need to lie about how this person is a radical left-wing domestic terrorist, how she was definitely trying to kill an ICE agent by ramming the car, how the victim here was the actual ICE agent who was in the hospital. Like, they wouldn't feel the need to lie about everything if the situation that you could see with your own two eyes was black and white in the opposite direction. If she was like very clearly, you know, someone who was trying to kill cops, like someone who was trying to kill ICE agents in that situation, ram their car into these ICE agents, they wouldn't feel the need to lie about it. But if the evidence that you can see with your own two eyes is contradicting what the party is telling you that you must believe, at a certain point, you have to snap out of it. And if you still can't snap out of it in this situation, there is never, ever going to be a moment where you realize right from wrong. Okay? That's it. As a slow motion surveillance video of the shooting played on the laptop, we told him that this angle did not appear to show an ICE officer being run over. Well, Mr. Trump said, the way I look at it, it's a terrible scene, Mr. Trump said at the end of the video. I think it's horrible to watch. No, I hate to see it. So even Trump himself could not actually sit there, watch the video, and say, yeah, no, this is totally justifiable. This was cool. This was A-okay. Okay? And yet there are still content creators on this platform and on Twitter that are running around telling you, you have to believe it. You have to believe that this was good. This was good. She was a terrorist. She was a terrorist. Does that not even for one moment cause you to think maybe these guys are lying to me? Not even in this instance. Because if you can't see it now, I don't know if you can ever see it. I'm going to show you one more time the interior of this car, okay? Because I think this is a powerful image. Renee Nicole Good was 37 years old. The ICE agent stopped a doctor on the scene from giving her aid. They blocked the road so the EMTs arrived on foot. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called her a domestic terrorist before she was in the ambulance, before they could like officially pronounce her dead, basically. Do you think this person was a domestic terrorist? If you cannot realize that this is a perfect distillation of how if someone is killed by the state, they will always find reason. They will always find a justification. They will always call them a terrorist. If you cannot even empathize and identify a person that is more likely to be your neighbor, your mother, your cousin, your sister, a loved one, if you can't even recognize the humanity of a 37-year-old lady, a kind-hearted person with plushy toys in her glove compartment, and you reject what you can see with your own two eyes, and you just go, nope, that person is a villain. Why? Because the government told me so. I don't think you can ever see the truth ever again. This was a woman protecting her community. She was going out of her way to stand up for her neighbors and people she didn't know. People like this are the best of us, and that's why they want to kill people like her. Exactly. Exactly. You don't have to agree with my worldview on anything. That's not even the argument that I'm making here, okay? You don't have to agree with me on the fact that, you know, these immigrants are actually some of the best people that we have in American society. You might think that's libtard shit, okay? You might go, nah, I don't believe you. They're scary, whatever. I'm not even going to argue on that point right now. I think you're wrong, but I'm not even arguing on that point right now. I am trying to find common humanity in this moment. If you cannot find common humanity here with something that is so transparently, blaringly obvious, just it's grating how unjustifiable this instance was. And if you cannot see that, then you might be lost. Something that you can see with your own two eyes, you are rejecting. ultimately, what the state is creating here is a permission structure where if you happen to be around an ICE agent under any circumstance, whether you're retreating, whether they just had a bad day, whether they were in fear for their lives, even if they have their phone out filming you in the process, if they kill you, you deserved it. That's it. This is a precedent-setting moment. Do you understand? And some of you that still try to defend this situation, are unironically writing off you're writing off your own death sentence. Okay? She almost killed an ICE agent, in my opinion. My loved ones wouldn't be in such a dumb situation, law. Brother, if there are more people, we will see in the upcoming months if there are enough people that have this exact same attitude, or if we finally put an end to this. If we don't put an end to this, you will find out that it's not about being in this situation, that any number of people, any number of your loved ones or yourself could be in the situation, because the situation is not about the intent of the person, the intent of the victim here. The situation is just, are you around an ICE agent who's having a bad day or not? At that point, it just becomes a game of probability. If we don't have any rules, if we don't have any laws, if we don't have any process that we follow here, if we do not punish those who engage in unjustifiable acts such as this one, it's utter madness, it's complete chaos. And anytime you are around a cop or an ICE agent, you're signing off on your death sentence. That's it. Why is this guy here when daddy is live? I don't know. R.I.P. Bozo, L. I think these guys just want to feel, they want to be seen. That's what it is. I think that they're basically desperate for a crumb of attention, and they know I'll give it to them because I'm stupid enough to dignify them with a response. I'm stupid enough to think that they're like real human beings that can be reasoned with. And I'm obviously not going to give up on people. As you know, it's probably one of my worst qualities. I'm going to continue endlessly advocating for truth. I'm going to try to get people to understand, to recognize right from wrong, no matter what the situation is. And if I didn't do this for the last decade, the last 10 years or so, I wouldn't have a community of like-minded individuals who have actually reached a level of empathy. Stop being so naive. You're feeding into their trolling. It doesn't matter. For every single person that comes in here that want to troll, there are always going to be people that are maybe in the margins. I know that for a fact, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Fringe to engage in doxing, to try to make it impossible for them to enforce the law, and in some cases actually to engage in acts of domestic terrorism against our law enforcement officers. When you talk about different plans, different protocols, different policies, I forget exactly how you asked the question. Here's the simple fact. What we're going to do is make it easier for the American People's Administration to enforce the American People's law. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that
this wasn't even a legitimate law enforcement operation. This was an illegitimate law enforcement operation, by the way.
We are going to get tougher, and that's what this AAG position is about. We're going to get tougher at the people who are defrauding the United States by inciting violence against our law enforcement.
Look, see, for every person that yells at me about, like, why are you covering Asmongold or whatever, there are people like this. I was an Asmongold watcher in college. He mentioned you, and the rest was history. Been a sub for 3 years now. Joined the DSA and all. Keep talking, friend. I came over from Asmon months ago and woke up. You're doing God's work. Okay? Many of you don't realize that you were in a similar predicament before. Maybe it was 5 years ago. Maybe it was 10 years ago when you were watching Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson. Asmongold is just a new name, a new person that is advocating for the same exact vicious commentary that justifies all this stuff. Okay? That's it. People come and go. Okay? We have had ordained villains in this community for the last decade. You know? It's not new. I have to continue to hope that people have an open mind and can be charitable, especially in important moments like this, where they can actually see right from wrong. This is an opportunity for a lot of people to go, you know what? I thought this guy was awful, but it turns out like he's kind of being reasonable here. The other side is being not so common sense based, okay? I come in peace from Asmus Shah. He lost it in the last couple of months, and now you're making sense. Never thought I'd be here. Yeah, you have to understand, this is the point. You were one of my main eye openers to see Peterson and Elon and Shapiro for the grifting psychos they are back in like 2018. Exactly. There are so many people in this community that came from that kind of background that thought, you know, that the world was a certain way, and that these guys like Ben Shapiro and whatnot were actually telling them the truth, when in fact all they were doing is basically telling you like, no, the systems that you are experiencing, the cruelty that you're seeing, you know, the struggles that you go through in your day-to-day, whether it be trying to make rent, whether it be trying to pay for groceries, all of that stuff is actually good because the alternatives are scary. And everyone that tells you that there is a better future possible, that we can have more equitable outcomes, they're lying to you. They're communists, they're scary, they're radicals, they're dangerous, they're terrorists. And now they're trying to do that with this. Anyone who says, hey, I don't want masked public servants with no accountability murdering people in the street in broad daylight is a terrorist, is not a sustainable narrative for an administration. It's not a sustainable narrative for nation building. It's going to be pure chaos. It's mind-boggling. A state that calls a 37-year-old woman in her own neighborhood shot and killed in her Honda Pilot a terrorist will call you a terrorist with much, much greater ease, okay? Like, this is not even along racialized boundaries at this point. Like, it's moved up. The American government has always leaned into racialized narratives. White supremacy is a very powerful weapon to galvanize people, to get people to associate themselves with, like, a black victim that always deserves it, right? Like, they always deserve it because they're scary, all this stuff. Same with undocumented people, same with brown people, same with victims of colonial violence overseas. But when that violence comes to your doorstep and the victim is someone even you can identify with, and they're still doing the same thing, they're still hitting the same lines, and you're still finding yourself duped by this government narrative, it might be over for you. Wake up.
Officers. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've already started that work at the Department of Justice, but we're going to keep on doing it, and this new AAG position is going to kick that into high gear.
Vice President Vance, you just suggested that this woman who was killed, Renee Good, is part of a broader left-wing network. Who do you think is behind this broader left-wing network?
Well, it's one of the things we're going to have to figure out, but here's the way that I put it. When somebody throws a brick at an ICE agent, or somebody tries...
First of all, even in those circumstances, it's not justifiable to assassinate someone, for the record. And I know you might disagree with me on that, but that's not even what happened. That's not even what happened. Why are you making up different things? It's because they cannot justify the situation with the facts that are presented. And that's the reason why they have to dive into hypotheticals. Well, what if she had a nuclear weapon that she was about to explode? And we've done this song and dance over and over again with Israel for the last 2 years. So obviously people who have been in this community for the last 2 years have already heard me argue against these talking points over and over again. Oh, well, what if she had a dangerous weapon? What if she had an AR-15 pointed in the direction of these beautiful law enforcement officers? Okay, what if?
To run over an ICE agent, who paid for the brick? And who told protesters to show up and engage in violent activity against our law enforcement officers? You see, just with this most recent terrible incident in Minneapolis, you see friends of this woman's or other people who are eyewitnesses saying basically that she was there to engage in obstruction of a legitimate law enforcement operation. How did she get there? How did she learn about this? There's an entire network, and frankly, some of the media are participating in it, that is trying to incite violence against our law enforcement officers. It's ridiculous, it's preposterous, and part of our investigatory work is getting to the bottom of it. Who's funding it, who's supporting it, who's cheerleading it, and of course, if there's a legal act.
It also doesn't make sense, right? If she's a terrorist, then why is this a terrible incident? If she's a domestic terrorist, address the inconsistencies, even in the argumentation here. She's a violent terrorist that is a part of a violent terrorist network. So why is it a terrible incident that took place? If you killed a violent, gruesome terrorist, why are you sitting here and offering fake sympathy? Why is that the case? Shouldn't you be celebrating it? If anything, people like Asmongold who are celebrating it are at least more morally consistent here. I mean, obviously they're immoral and they're monstrous, but technically they're more logically consistent, right? At least they're celebrating the death of a 37-year-old woman, the execution of a 37-year-old woman by saying, well, she's a terrorist, right? So even that doesn't make sense. When you fell an enemy of the state, do you sit there and cry tears? No, you celebrate, right? So why aren't you celebrating in this circumstance? Perhaps it's because you realize that you're lying.
Activity related to that, we're going to get to the bottom of that and prosecute it where we can.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for taking questions today. Is there a risk with you describing her?
I came from Asman and thought you were a terrorist empathizer. Yeah, maybe you now realize that they call everybody a terrorist. Okay? It's a post-mortem association that ends up justifying the act. One day they will call you a terrorist too, after they kill you or your loved ones. That's it. Why do you get so many viewers? You're boring as because unfortunately common sense is not so common, especially in this current media landscape where literally the dumbest positions are blasted in the orbit by some of the dumbest people you've ever encountered. And therefore, a lot of people actually breathe a sigh of fresh air when they encounter someone who goes, yeah, this stuff is crazy, actually. So perhaps that's the reason why a lot of people come in here. Maybe not because I'm the most entertaining person. It's not supposed to be entertaining, okay? This is supposed to be a moment of a moment for people to go, holy f***, there are actually normal humans out here on the internet.
Is talking about very specific facts of these events. When an investigation is just beginning, are you preempting a thorough investigation by drawing such conclusions? And have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who is trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a
That's bullshit. It's not a legitimate law enforcement operation. You're just saying that nobody debates that because you don't want to debate that, because it would undermine everything that you're trying to do.
Who, you know, is not a terrorist, not an extremist. That was just a mom who loved her kids, loved her spouse, who...
Yeah, that's who they're calling a terrorist, by the way. A domestic extremist, a domestic terrorist. Anyone and everyone that looks at the situation and says, nah, she's a terrorist, you will justify if the government kills your family, okay? At that point, you will literally turn around and say, oh, well, you know, maybe my mom deserved it too. That's it. That's it. It's crazy. That means you have signed off on state-sanctioned murder as long as you are in the vicinity of a cop. Okay? If you're in the vicinity of a cop, if you're in the vicinity of an ICE agent, and they just shoot and kill you in broad daylight, and everyone can see it with their own two eyes, it is unjustifiable, cold-blooded murder, you'll still find a way to reason it. You'll still find a way to game it out. It's mind-boggling to me